Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully, everyone's accommodating to working from home if you started doing that. Tom and I are spoiled. We've been working from home for a while now, so this is pretty much status quo for us. But we have family and friends that are just now getting into it and just now experiencing what's going on. So if that's you, hopefully it's going well, and hopefully we can bring some new updates about what's happening in 365 for you guys.
There
So
you go.
Jen is not joining us this week. She is busy as all junk, which is understandable. One of the products she kind of works on is a training platform, and going back to this theme of people starting to work from home, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, she's been insanely busy trying to get content together, get new people spun up on the platform, stuff like that. So Tom and I are flying solo this week.
Yes, you're getting your testosterone-laden COVID-19 version of the roadmap for this week.
The version no one wanted.
Yeah, there you go. But you're going to get anyway because you're socially distanced right now.
Yeah, so
Um,
just a reminder, guys, we're going to go through and look at some of the updates. We'll start with in development. We'll talk about rolling out. We'll talk about launched. There are actually a couple canceled things this week, too, so we'll kind of talk about stuff a little bit. But following the general theme, there's not a ton of updates coming out. We were approaching conference season. I think they're going to probably move a lot of those conferences to be virtual and stuff like that. But tends to be this time of the year. It's not overly crazy. But we'll go ahead and get into it. I'll let Tom kick us off in the in development area.
so I'm going to focus, as I usually do, more on the SharePoint side of things since that's where I make my living. One of the things that has just hit the in development is cumulative analytics for hubs in SharePoint. So what this means is when you go out to a SharePoint hub site and you look at site analytics, now you're going to be able to see site usage that aggregates all the total visitor or total visits, unique visitors, top sites, popular content for all the associated sites in that particular hub, which I think is really cool because if you're using your hub as kind of a home page for topic X or division Y or department Z, whatever, uh, it's one thing to be able to say, hey, here's how many people are hitting my hub, but it's also nice to be able to see, and here's the kind of traffic that we're getting for all the sites that are associated with this. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a really cool feature for people to get a clue as to how many people are coming to their sites, things like that. We have SharePoint integrations with Power Automate and Power Apps. This is now hitting the GCC High tenants. Yeah, I would sit there and go, not exactly my area of expertise, but I know this makes Adam really happy because they live in the whole GCC world.
Well, everything's so slow in the GCC environment, and I always have to watch myself because we do this show and because I go and talk at conferences and stuff. I'm kind of about the latest and the greatest, and all the time I'll be like, "Oh, do you see this new feature that you don't have yet?" Yeah. So you have to kind of be careful about it. So very happy to see some of these integrations coming through. You could do Power Automate, you could do Power Apps in GCC High, but some of the easy out of the box one click stuff that you could do in SharePoint, that's what's coming. It's gonna be really nice.
Yeah, I mean, Adam's the type that walks in and goes, I've got candy. Sorry, you don't.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, and the last thing that kind of falls into the whole SharePoint realm is for SharePoint and OneDrive, they're doing a navigation update for narrow screens. So if you're trying to use your iPhone or a smartphone to look at SharePoint sites or to look at OneDrive things, um, they're changing the location of the hamburger menu. So it's now going to be up in the header area and for your site and command bar for files instead of in the suite bar. So they're just trying to narrow it down and give you more useful space when you are trying to use that limited screen real estate type version of a site. So I think
Yeah,
that's
in the old version, you clicked on it, it would just take up the whole screen. Like you have a
yeah,
menu, and then your screen was the menu, and you're just like,
yeah.
oh, okay.
So
So
that looks
I'm gonna. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I'm gonna throw out a couple things, but we'll keep these quick. I'm not going to go too deep into this one because this is very admin-y and I don't want people to fall asleep on me. But they're coming out with what's a pretty cool security thing. So if you have Microsoft ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, they're doing some updates that are specifically targeted around making it less likely that you can fail your users. So if you as an admin previously went through, they had an allow domain section, and it would basically let you put anything you wanted in there, which is fine. But say you put in a domain that has a very bad reputation, right? So say one of your users messages you, I want to get mail from this, and turns out that that domain or users from that domain send out spam or send out junk all the time. And, some user, maybe some level 1 IT guy goes through and adds it in. You've now opened up your system to a whole bunch of issues. Well, they're basically trying to get on top of that a little bit. When you go through and you add in, they're basically rolling out the idea of they're not going to have these allow rules be able to apply to domains that fail authentication. So going through and saying, okay, I own this domain, this is good, I want to use it, stuff like that. If that hasn't happened for the domain that's trying to send mail out, it's not going to allow you to put these domains inside of that section. Now, there is still going to be a workaround. If no, I know what I'm doing, I want to do this, you can do exchange transport rules and stuff like that to still make sure you're allowing this domains, but just it kind of avoids that slip up of an unintentional exposure of your users, which is pretty cool. And then there's also been a couple updates around quarantine. So one of them is they basically put in a new workflow in ATP where end users have an easier time of basically triaging their own quarantine messages. So instead of them having to go through and reach out to the admin and say, I think I had a message, can you go through and dig it out for me? It's basically going to make it easier for users to identify false positives and kind of address stuff like that. And the other side, or the other updates around quarantine, basically the quarantine behavior was configured through each individual filtering policy you had. So if you had 30 filtering policies for the different sets of users in your tenant, you'd have 30 different ways that would go through and determine the quarantine. To make it less complex, they're basically doing a standalone quarantine policy. So one of the things that I do a lot of times with my larger enterprise customers is how you're handling and addressing your mail for your CEO is probably different for how you're doing it for Debbie in the mailroom, right? And so maybe the CEO needs to be pretty secure because you need to make sure you're locking everything down, but that's too strict to do everyone in your organization. Well, again, each time you did this, that would change how the quarantine worked. So now those policies are separate. You can handle how you want to look at mail, how strict you want to be on one hand, and handle how you want to do quarantine for your whole organization on the other, which I think is pretty cool.
Well, I think that pretty much covers the in development stuff. Rolling out is very small too. It's only got like 5 items in there, I think. So I will touch very briefly on 3 of them. One is the roadmap and the new project for education is coming soon. So apparently there's a new reimagined Microsoft project and roadmap for education customers. So if you happen to fall into the education realm and you're a heavy user of project, you should probably keep an eye on this because it's giving new features that are supposed to really more apply to that particular environment where they haven't had that in the past. It kind of builds on some of the other updates that they've recently been doing to project in the reimagined state. So that should be good. They've also, in the rolling out stage, you've got multilingual page publishing for modern SharePoint. So you're now going to be able to create, publish, and consume modern SharePoint pages and news in multiple languages. And finally, for Project for the Web, you can turn on or off that particular application for your organization through a new setting found in the Microsoft Admin Center. So again, if you're using Project or that's something you want to do, or people are going, I want it, but you want to block it from your environment, you'll be able to do that from the 365 tenant now. So, and that's about it from my side.
So you probably know which one I want to talk about because it's extremely technical and nerdy. So there's a really cool new feature coming to ADFS where basically they're calling it Risky IP for ADFS or Active Directory Federation Services extranet lockout protection. It's coming to public preview. That's a mouthful. Basically, what this is going to do is if you have ADFS, which is you have your login servers that you're managing as a keys to the kingdom to get into Office 365 and Azure Active Directory. Well, right now, there are a couple potential issues with the sense that they are hitting your login servers, they're not hitting Microsoft's login servers, so Microsoft doesn't necessarily know what's going on. Now, if you are very good with managing how you're doing your login servers, you could put some robust security policies around, but I can tell you from having done it a couple times, it is extremely complicated to do so. It is not an easy implementation. So it's very common when people had ADFS systems that they would have brute force attempts on their system and stuff like that they didn't necessarily manage well. Well, this new public preview feature that they're putting out, it will basically give it so that ADFS will stop authenticating malicious users for a period of time. So if it notices some behavior that it doesn't like what's going on, it will basically stop trying to authenticate those users, actually based on their IP address, which I think is pretty cool, both the user count and the IP address. So it prevents the problem that, okay, someone's tried to log in 100 times and now my local AD account is locked, and so Dan over in marketing suddenly can't get in any of his stuff because he's not doing anything wrong, but someone's trying to act like they're Dan and log into our system. So it prevents that, but it also makes it easier to not have brute force password attempts and stuff in Azure AD as a whole. So pretty cool feature that they're rolling out that's basically going to add security, and I actually really like to see this. So ADFS is a Microsoft technology that they developed, but if you want me to be honest about it, it's kind of going the way of the wayside. Pass-through authentication is kind of the new flavor of the month. It's what everyone's moving to. You can get the same seamless sign-on experience for a fraction of the cost and infrastructure. It's just easier to do as a whole. But organizations that hardcore still care about security still have ADFS. So the fact that they're coming through and developing new security features and stuff around it made me really happy to see.
Cool.
So yeah, moving on to Launched.
I was going to say that pretty much covered rollout right there. Launched is the final one. There are a number of these items out there that I will just briefly touch on because they're ones that we've probably talked about in the past, because launch means it's gone through the rollout and it should be general availability in your client for right now. So we'll just kind of go through this really quickly. For SharePoint, the Power Apps web part, you can now add that to any SharePoint Modern page regardless of data source. So it doesn't just have to be, hooking to SharePoint or, whatever. You could be building Canvas apps or whatever using Power Apps and get that across the board. So that's really good there. I've noticed this one here, which is Outlook for Windows. Your ribbon icons have a new look. They're more sharply defined. They look better. They render better based on the size of your screen. So if you've done a refresh lately, you may notice that you've got new icons up there.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, the help and support pane from the Office 365 navbar. This is kind of cool if you haven't seen it. It gives you the ability to customize that help. And so you can put information like, this is how you contact our help desk. And, here's a link to go out and find information about XYZ. So that's kind of cool in the fact that it's not just this generic, hey, if you need to have help on how to do XYZ, click here and you'll get Microsoft, documents or something. This makes them much more specific to your particular environment, which is a really good deal. The SharePoint web part for code snippets, which allows you to share code snippets, has the correct syntax, all that kind of stuff. That's now widely available, so you can now put those on modern pages. SharePoint sites, view and apply site designs from within the site. This is a thing where if you have site designs out there that you want to apply to your site, you can now go out there if you're a site owner or a site administrator, find those, apply them to your site. And if the site designs have permissions that have been put on there and you're not allowed to get to that particular site design, it's security trimmed. So it's keeping you from going in and doing site designs that you shouldn't be able to do if you don't have the general permissions for those. What else do we have here? Outlook for Windows, set and share your focused inbox preference. So now if you have focused inbox set one way for Outlook for Windows, it's also going to carry through to Outlook on the web. So you're going to have a consistent look and feel and behavior between Outlook wherever you're using it. So that's a good thing. And I think that is the really quick run through. One more thing here. This is a little further down. Collaboration just got easier. I love whoever writes these things. Real-time co-authoring is now available for Visio for the web. So if you really like the ability to work on documents online shared with another individual, this ability's now come down to Visio, and it's based on whether you have a Visio Plan 1 or Plan 2. And if you've got that, you can do Visio on the web, you can collaborate with your other people. And I think if you're a heavy Visio user and you're doing a lot of work on documents with others, this is going to be a lifesaver for you.
Yeah, so I'm going to just mention two on the launch side. One of them kind of has a special place for me. Whether it's a good place or a bad place is kind of hard to determine. So Microsoft Teams is what they're calling broadcast meetings. It's basically going to be called live events in Microsoft Teams. This is the expansion of a feature that you had in Skype for Business. Skype for Business basically had the ability to do large town hall style meetings. And the cool thing about it, so I worked with my client that I used to have out in Australia that was a really big oil and gas company to set this up in their Skype infrastructure. If you actually get into the technology of it, it really does work like a live stream in the sense that when you go through and look at the bandwidth, it's really no more bandwidth than like a 1 or 2 person video call, which is kind of incredible when you're talking about the scale of having potentially thousands of people joining an event when you're new. But they developed the technology really cool. They're expanding that and what they developed originally for Link. Or Skype, depending on how you're looking on it, to Teams and what they're calling live events. So I don't know if a ton of people would use this, but in the current world that we're living in where people are doing, this is what you could do if like your CEO wants to address everyone in the company during like a town hall style meeting. Well, you're not going to bring everyone into a giant auditorium. This gives you the option to potentially be able to do stuff online, which I think is pretty cool. And again, like complicated to get working right, but if you actually look at the underpinnings of the technology, it's pretty cool. And happy to see this coming to Teams. And I think couldn't be better timing considering everything that's going on in the world.
Exactly. I think based on what everybody's doing with sending people home and the whole bit, the timing of this hitting fully launched right now is really, really good. Keeping in mind that Teams has struggled over the last week or two. They've had things
In
that
Europe,
haven't worked
they had an
well.
outage.
Yeah, they've had outages. They've actually come in and said they're scaling back some features so things don't update as frequently as you're used to seeing. So, people are like, oh, they can't make this work. Give them a little bit of a break because they've kind of had to like double capacity here
Yeah.
in no time flat. And I don't think very many companies could do that at the scale that they're having to do it right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm sure there's tons of companies out there like us. Just the number of like universities that we've had reach out to our company in the last couple of weeks, where it's like, hey, we now need to be able to run all of our classes from home for our 10,000 students. What do we need to do? Just the amount of people we've had come and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure it's kind of freaking out right now. It was actually cool if you look at that update. It was scheduled for Q2 of this year, and they actually got it out in Q1. Which again, like, I don't know if they put extra effort to get it done, knowing what was going on, or if it just happened to work out that way, but great timing.
Well, actually, look at it was generally targeted for availability Q2 for calendar year 2019.
Yeah. So
This
maybe
was
not
for
so quick,
last year.
but they got it done, so we're okay.
They got it done, and that's a good thing.
So the other one I wanted to mention, I actually got to experience this earlier this week, which was pretty cool. There is a massive update to how they're doing support out of the Office 365 tenants. So if you're not an admin of your tenant, you probably don't care about this too much, but a whole bunch of quality of life improvements. I can't go through all of them. They literally have like 20 of them listed there, but some of the ones that I saw that I thought were really cool, they actually increased the character limit when you're typing a description. Chances are, if I'm opening up a support ticket with Microsoft, it's not a simple fix. And oftentimes it's a very, very convoluted, complicated thing to even explain. And it was always frustrating for me because it used to be 1,500 characters. And with 1,500 characters, I had to basically be like, we're having a generic problem with this. Call me and I'll give you details. So I can actually now kind of explain what's going on. I'm probably too wordy to begin with. But the fact that I can put a little bit of description in there, or a longer description is cool. But some other stuff they're doing, you can actually do callback scheduling directly through the ticketing system now. Before, you just had to say, oh yeah, I want to be reached by phone, and like cool, I'm going to get called at some point. For me, half the time that was, like 9 o'clock at night as I was, like out to dinner or something. So the fact that you can actually schedule callbacks directly when you're creating tickets is pretty cool. You can go back and look at some of your ticket history. You can do case export history. And they try to do a whole bunch of, I can definitely understand this. They try to do some intelligent self-serve stuff. So when you go in and you start creating a ticket and you say, oh, I'm having a problem with Outlook, they'll bring up some self-help documentation and stuff that will like hopefully give you some commonly asked questions easily. But huge update to the support structure behind of it. And that's really all I have. Really, we have a couple canceled things to talk about. It really looks like only 2 of them are really canceled. But there are actually 4 things listed as canceled this week. Tom, you want to kind of start off?
Yeah. So they were looking at, for Android, they were going to do time to leave notifications for Outlook. So basically, if you were looking at your Outlook calendar and you were supposed to be somewhere, it would say, hey, you're going to need to have 15 minutes to get there, whatever. For whatever reason, that's now off the books. That's not going to happen. And then,
just for Android, I'm pretty sure that's still a thing in iOS.
Yeah, was kind of weird, but
whatever.
I don't know. Usage reports updates, new Office extensibility add-ins report. That's one that has bit the dust. So
that seemed a little excessive anyways. This was basically all it was going to be a usage report on what add-ins your users were using. And every client I've ever worked with falls into one of 2 categories. They don't care at all what add-ins their users are using, or they really care and therefore they want to control which ones they even have access to. And if you're controlling which ones they have access to, then they only are using the ones you're giving them anyways, so you probably don't care about this report.
Exactly.
All this report really does is give you a comprehensive list. So they're getting rid of it, but it kind of seemed like a unnecessary report to me in the first place. But
and then the other 2 that we have on here, one is Outlook Calendar new APIs, and that's been replaced by another roadmap item. So it's still going to happen. It's just not under this particular ID. It's under a different ID now. And then add additional participants to meeting chats. That was a duplicate to an existing one. So they've gone ahead and closed the 59,386, and you're going to see it under 59,664. But other than that, those are the
664.
Woohoo! Go 664.
But really, just 2 canceled. It was a pretty easy show this week, guys. Hopefully, everyone's taking care of themselves and their loved ones with everything going on. Excited to see some new stuff coming out. Like seeing the live meetings hitting launch. It'll definitely be a good thing to do. And until next week, guys, stay safe, enjoy yourselves, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
Bye, all.